We are living in times where there is an assault on sanity. Political correctness has run amok and logic has been left by the wayside. Do you constantly ask yourself, WTF is going on in this nation? Do you sometimes feel like a stranger in your own country? Well, fear not. You are not alone. This is the Whiskey Tango Foxtrot Show, coming to you from deep inside flyover country with your hosts, V. Wright and Jose Estevez.
Welcome, everybody. It's WTF, and I am V. Wright.
And I am Jose Estevez. Welcome to a brand spanking new week of the Whiskey Tango Foxtrot Radio Show, folks, where 4 nights a week, Monday through Thursday, from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern, we come to you live, unrehearsed, unscripted, and PG-13, but never PC. As I've already told you, you are listening to the Whiskey Tango Foxtrot Radio Show, and welcome to a brand spanking new week. We're glad to be here.
Yes, we are. And if you'd like to share our information with your friends, family, loved ones, co-workers, associates, the guy down the street, your neighbor, whoever, send them to our website, thewtfradioshow.com. You can send them to our host network, Patriot Network News, at pnntalkradio.com, patriotsride.org. You can send them to tunein.com, spreaker.com, or iTunes, all three of which have an app that allow them to carry it on the go on your mobile unit. In addition to that, you can play us later on demand live. If you have a show that you enjoyed and you'd like to share it with others, you can also go to our Facebook page, WTF, the Whiskey Tango Foxtrot Show. Give it a like, and every night after our show, the show is posted there, and you can play it on demand. You can pick it up on YouTube later. Let's see, where else? Oh, and if you want to, I'm like lost in space tonight. If you like to follow us, you can go to our Facebook page, or you can hit us up on Twitter at the WTF Radio. Guys, if you'd like to call in tonight or any night that we are on the air live, you can do so by calling 313-462-0068. And we have a heck of a week lined up for you. Tonight we have Victoria Kay. She'll be joining us with the Russian perspective. Looking forward to that. Tomorrow night we have Suzanne Sherman joining us. In-depth discussion, and always a pleasure to have Suzanne. Of course, we have WTF Wednesday on Wednesday. And then we have Trevor Loudon joining us on Thursday. For those of you who don't know who Trevor is, he is from New Zealand. He is very active in right-leaning politics. He's a political activist, an author, and he has been in politics himself. Wonderful guy. I'm very much looking forward to having him. Those of you who are familiar with him or who have heard him speak at Tea Party events and other things when he comes to the United States, or heard him on other shows, and he has been on some of the big names, guys, then you know exactly what I'm talking about, and he will be with us on Thursday, so make sure you join us Thursday night for that. Senor, how was your weekend?
It was a good weekend. Got lots of accomplishments around the house. Other than that, didn't do much, but that was enough.
Well, this was a weekend I actually didn't go anywhere.
Geez, that's news in itself. There's news in and of itself.
But next Wednesday, I will be coming to you guys live from Charleston, South Carolina, because I'm going to meet Suzanne Sherman for the week.
Oh, jeez. Oh, boy. What the F indeed.
We're going to be hanging in Charleston. So she'll be with us tonight, or tomorrow night. She'll be with us next Tuesday night. And then Wednesday, she and I will be in Charleston.
There you go. Well, look out Charleston. Look out Charleston. That's all I'm going to say.
That's it. However, I did not go anywhere this past weekend. I did stick close to home and take care of some things that have been highly neglected in my home. It's amazing how many things you find when you're never home, or when you work from home, and then you do the general things, and then you bust out the doors and you leave for days. When you do that repetitively, it's amazing to find the things that you find that you really that to-do list gets long fast.
Oh, I would imagine so. Understood.
Anyway, so I got quite a bit accomplished. Not as much as I should have, but you know how that goes. I can only do so much at one time. Anyway, we have a story that is outrageous. It is sad. It is pathetic. It is infuriating. And just about any other kind of emotion that you can conjure up if you have any affinity for our veterans or for our elderly. And if you have a special affinity for both, then that is probably magnified. Senor.
Yes, it is. You must be talking about the veterans, huh?
I am indeed.
The veterans getting crapped on again and again and again and again, and the Veterans Administration providing you can't even call it providing care. I mean, it's the opposite of providing care. I mean, you know, aren't doctors, don't they take the Hippocratic Oath maybe in some cases, but the Hippocratic Oath? But yet our veterans, by and large, continue to suffer at the hands of these doctors that they get. I don't know where they get them from. I suspect a lot of them are from overseas. I don't know if they're scraping the bottom of the barrel, if that's just the best they have to offer. I don't know what it is, but our Veterans Administration continues to be out of control. It's despicable.
Well, there's a veterans home up in Quincy, Illinois,
Yep.
that has had an outbreak of Legionnaire's disease. And from the information that is available, thus far, they have had 11 confirmed deaths and 54 diagnosed with that illness. Now, for those of you who are unfamiliar with what Legionnaire's disease is, it's a bacteria, a mold-like bacteria that gets in water systems, and that can be air conditioning, it could be in water tanks, basically any water system where water is left standing. Now, according to the Journal, 2 more residents of this veterans home in Quincy have died of Legionnaire's disease, bringing the total number of deaths to 11 since the start of the outbreak in late August. The residents, who both died over the weekend, have both previously tested positive for the disease and had underlying health conditions. The total number of Legionnaire cases at the veterans home remains at 54. The Adams County Health Department, which confirmed the 2 deaths Monday, says that test results for environmental water samples at the home are still pending, so that they have no cause for the outbreak that has been identified. But both public health and home staff say they've taken steps to sanitize the water systems at the veterans home, including the cooling tower and cooling tanks, which, if anybody recalls, there was a big thing in Chicago about 20 years ago where cooling towers and water tanks on the top of a building had developed Legionnaires, and when it would mist up, it would fall off the side of the building, and people were getting sick, just random people. And people in the building coming and going. There was a major outbreak. I'm going to say this. One person gets sick from Legionnaires, okay, you might attribute that to maybe an outing or some other location. 2 people get sick, you sanitize your system anyway.
Right.
Because you are their common thread. This is where they live. This is an elder's home. It's a elder's home for veterans. There was absolutely no excuse for those systems not to have been sanitized immediately. Now, would that have stopped all 54 from getting sick? Probably. Because the exposure remained. Would it have stopped all these deaths? Probably.
Mm-hmm.
Would a couple of more maybe have occurred? Maybe, because of the exposure prior to. But they should have gone in and completely sanitized and sterilized everything immediately. I'm absolutely disgusted with this. I want to be so angry, but my heart just breaks in that these men gave everything to this country, and this is how they repaid them. And to their families, my heart breaks.
Doesn't it, though? It's absolutely unconscionable. Absolutely unconscionable. And just a little bit more detail than you gave. It's a severe, often lethal form of pneumonia, Legionnaire's diseases. And actually, an estimated 10 to 18,000 people are infected with the Legionella bacteria in the United States each year. It does not provide how many of those tend to die, but of course we know, now based on pneumonia, and of course a Veterans Administration hospital, primarily you can imagine taking care of older people for the most part. We know how bad pneumonia is for an older person to contract, which of course would more than likely, I would imagine, I don't know what that percentage is, lead to death, which of course it has. This is something else. I mean, this Veterans Administration just, I don't know. I don't know where you even begin with the thing. I mean, do you start over from scratch from the top? I mean, you've got Dr. Ben Carson saying get rid of the Veterans Administration. Of course, he wants it to go, the Department of Defense to be in control. I think that's an absolutely horrible idea. I think the Department of Defense ought to be the Department of War, and simply that. But what do you do? And you've got to get somebody in there, because obviously the reforms that they're trying are either not working quick enough or they're just not being effective. And they're not, and I don't necessarily mean that they need to throw money at the problem. They need to get some good people in charge, and some people that really care. There's got to be people that really care about working with these veterans and providing them the most excellent care possible. I mean, we give free health care to anybody that walks across the border and calves out a kid on American soil. And now we're talking about, and we'll probably talk further in the broadcast, about 10,000 Syrians, which I think will be a minimum. I think the real number will be 10 times that, if not 100 times that.
Wait a minute.
But I mean, immediately when they come
over
here, they get health care.
The White House has already expanded that to 100,000.
Well, there we go. Well, and there you have it, folks. I mean, but yet our veterans can't get the best care in the world. Absolutely ridiculous. It just, I don't know where to begin. Anger just doesn't do any good anymore. So there's no sense getting upset and yelling about it. I just don't know what to do. I mean, we throw good money after bad on such
money
crap
we
in
don't
this world.
have.
Money we don't
have. We are borrowing money from other countries and central bankers to accomplish these feats. Mm-hmm. Where does that make sense? And the only people getting rich or making anything or profiting at all or going to be any better are those people invested in the central banks. Mm-hmm. But we're going to talk about that more tomorrow night with Suzanne.
We don't want to go too far off on that. Yeah. Reel it back in.
But it's the truth. It's the
truth. And the fact that our veterans aren't getting better treatment and better care and quick and good service, just, it's mind-boggling.
Well, I can tell you that the United States military has acknowledged that our military men and women that went to Afghanistan, Iraq, etc., between 2003 and 2011 were exposed to chemicals. They were exposed to it. They have sent out a questionnaire to question when you were there, etc., and they're willing to give a medal for it. Mm-hmm. However, and I know this to be a fact, when you go to a TRICARE doctor, which is our military's medical care that's supposed to be so wonderful, folks, their first classification before doing any test is asthma. You've got asthma. Oh, I developed asthma at 30 years old. No reason. Just came back from Iraq and I've got asthma. And that's their classification. And folks, if y'all want to know what the healthcare system is going to look like. Everybody touts this free medical care that our military gets. What they don't see is that, say if you got a bad knee or a bad shoulder and you're in pain all the time, it can take up to 2 years before you finally get a resolution. It's not like, okay, I'm going to go see my doctor this week, I'm going to go see a specialist next week, and the week after I'll probably get surgery on it. No. I've got to fly halfway across the country to see this doctor, and fly halfway across the country to see that doctor, and those may be appointments a year apart. Then I've got to go back and see this doctor so that he can all get the final. Of course, he's got to send it off and be signed off on. So, it can take 2 years.
That's something.
And this is how our men and women are treated that have served this country, both current military and our veterans. Guys, it's not just our veterans that are getting the shaft through the VA. It is absolutely ridiculous. I have a friend that was in the military, or that is in the military, got into an accident. Nothing, able to walk away from it, but had some scratches and stuff like that. Went to, I don't know if you guys have this across the country or not, but went to an immediate med. Anybody know
like
what those are?
Medi Center?
Yeah, just
Right.
clean up the few scrapes or whatever. Sorry, Dave,
Right.
we can't treat you. You've got to go on post. Why? You're military. What?
Really?
I'm willing to pay you to fix me, and you will not see me? But that's a fact, folks. That is a fact. That's how it works. It's absolutely the most ridiculous thing in the world. Then you got other situations, speaking of bad medical care, because Lord knows we've got tons of that. And we've got tons coming. Actually, what we've got coming probably, folks, sooner than we thought, will be single payer. Because OCare enrollees will need to double by next year for OCare to remain solvent. Needs to double. It hasn't doubled since it went in. As a matter of fact, contrary to it doubling, more than 20% of the people who signed up for OCare plans on state and federal exchanges for 2015 have since dropped their coverage. Earlier this year, the administration reported that, there was 12.7 million had signed up for insurance. And, currently there's like 9.5 million paying customers on the exchange.
I think that's the critical point to make, is how many are actually paying.
Well, that's what they're saying is paying customers, but how many of those are actually not getting subsidies?
Well, and without the subsidies. Which in some cases, as we've had expert C. Stephen Tucker on, makes up that they pay virtually nothing at all.
Well, according to this report, the number of paying customers is still declining, but will be in the range of 9.1 to 9.9 million, which the administration said was their enrollment estimate for 2015. But that is not true, because they had said that the actual projected enrollment would be 13 to 15 million. So, of course, that's another situation where we'll just change it and say that's what we said, and nobody will notice, because nobody reads or pays attention to anything.
You can't even make this up.
No, you can't. You can't. You can't.
Oh,
and then on top of that, we have a situation where 400,000 plus immigrants, illegals,
illegal alien invaders,
whatever you want to call them, have lost their OCare. New rules governing Obamacare eligibility have caused around 400,000 invaders. I'm supposing they're invaders. They're saying immigrants, but I'm saying invaders, to lose their coverage that they thought that they had under OCare. A change in the enforcement of the amount of time allowing them to resolve their eligibility issues has kicked some 423,000 out of the benefits that they had earlier this year. The eligibility rules give foreign-born residents. Now, folks, think about that for a minute. Foreign-born residents. A 95-day window to prove they are either legal residents or naturalized citizens. That means you don't even have to be a citizen to get it. I did not know that. I mean, I knew that invaders and people visiting this country had signed up for it. But I did not know that it was documented that it was legal for them to do so. But yes, if you are a resident, not a citizen, a resident, you can get it. Well, anyway, they've got a 95-day window to prove, that they're legal or naturalized, during which time, they continue to be covered by OCare. However, letters have gone out, and many are failing to clear up the residency questions, and so they're bumping them off the rolls. Representatives for the National Immigration Law Center, NILC, insist that illegals would not be engaging in the system, so they reason that those losing their coverage must be legal if they were willing to risk alerting the authorities to their status. Why would they care? They've been told they won't be deported.
Right.
So that's crock. Advocates also claim that many who are losing their coverage are confused by the requirements and don't understand just what paperwork they need to turn in. Folks, that's a problem. If you can't understand basic instruction, then maybe your ass shouldn't have been brought in to begin them with. Maybe we don't need any more illiterate individuals here. Well, earlier this year, there was another 200,000 that lost their OCare coverage because they couldn't prove their legal residency. Detractors of Obamacare point out that these numbers make it clear that hundreds of thousands of illegal residents were getting OCare through coverage despite that they didn't qualify for it, and I agree with that. Worse, and I'm not going to say worse than this, but another factor to consider how they're doing this, and what's encouraging the illegal invasion is that there's a $3,000 penalty for employers. And that encourages employers to hire illegals to avoid the fee, which would only compound the problem. Needless to say, excuse me. Needless to say, with as many dropping off the rolls as there are, and it requiring a doubling, single payer, here we come.
I totally agree. Now, this is fortuitous because C. Stephen Tucker, folks, who's been on the air with us before, and he's an insurance expert, and I will definitely call him an expert out of the Chicago area his whole life, also a very conservative man. Here's what he posted 6 hours ago on social media, kind of going along with what V was talking about, and here's the facts. 15 health insurers have either closed their doors or been consumed by larger insurers since the passage of Obamacare, which leads to less competition and much higher prices. The latest mega acquisition of Anthem, purchasing Cigna, and Aetna, purchasing Humana, will diminish competition in up to 154 metropolitan areas within 23 states. That's almost half of the 57 states, folks. No worries, though. Both carriers have hired high-priced lobbyist firms to make sure their mergers take place. Perhaps the sleaziest is Cigna's choice to use John Podesta's former sister-in-law as their preferred lobbyist. Worse yet, most harmed by this merger will be senior citizens who rely on Medicare Advantage plans. This is crony capitalism at its worst, and those are words attributed directly to C. Stephen Tucker. Like I said, he's an insurance expert out of the Chicago area. And I'm telling you what, folks, you know that less competition is not good for your pocket. And that's exactly what is happening. And like you said, he's referring to these as mega acquisitions. Anthem is purchasing Cigna, and Aetna is purchasing Humana. So there's 4 big ones going into 2, being gobbled up, and then there'll be 2 big ones. But like he said, it's going to diminish competition in up to 154 metropolitan areas within 23 states. That's significant. And somebody you know, maybe you yourself, hopefully not you, is going to be affected by this.
Well, you got to stop
in a positive way.
You got to stop and think about it from the government's perspective. As they initiated this plan to begin with, number one, they knew that the American people would not sign up for single payer. Right. As going from a free market to single payer, so they had to do it in stages. Ocare was just a stage. The other thing that they had to alter was the private industry, and that was lessen the amount of businesses that they would have to negotiate contracts with. And so, of course, they did that by ensuring that there were fewer companies to work with. So that is being accomplished. Now we have a scenario where we don't have enough enrollees. So now the government is going to come forth and say, well, we don't have enough enrollees. People don't want to do what they're supposed to do. So we're just going to make the transition to a single payer's plan. Right. And that is coming. And folks, that will most definitely be here before the next elections. Mm-hmm. So,
and just to inform people, we talk about single payer, and maybe some of you folks, it's okay if you don't understand it completely. It's a pretty simple concept, actually. Most of us refer to it as communism or as socialism. You can refer to it as that. But exactly what is single payer? Single payer is national health insurance, better known by some people as Medicare for All. It's a system in which a single public or quasi-public agency organizes healthcare financing, and the government takes over, folks. The government pays for all healthcare costs rather than private insurers. That's like I said, a lot of us.
No, the government doesn't pay for anything. Wait a minute, let's back it up a minute.
Well,
the government doesn't pay for anything. The government can't pay for anything because the government produces nothing. It makes no income. Well, it only survives off of the wallet of the people.
The 40% carrying the cart.
Folks don't. People say that all the time, and I correct it all the time. Is people say, "Oh well, the government will take care of it. They'll pay for it." How can they pay for it? They show me where they get a paycheck. Where do they earn their money? Show it.
I agree.
It doesn't exist. Doesn't exist. There is no place that they make money. There isn't. Period. Every dime that they get come from you and I, guys.
It's true.
That's the way it is. Guys, we have someone joining us. Her name is Victoria K, and she is previously from Russia. She does live in the States now. And we've had an interesting conversation, and I would like to welcome her to being with us tonight. Victoria.
Yes. Hi. How are you guys?
We're
good.
Doing
Welcome
fine.
Yes, I appreciate you inviting me over. It's certainly a new experience for me, but I'll be happy to talk about some of the issues that may be interesting.
Absolutely. Victoria and I have had discussions in regards to the difference in, we share an affinity for our hatred of our Islamic friends. And that's just a natural bond, you know. I mean, that knows no borders.
Right.
But, you know, Victoria, you and I had discussed a little bit in how we have this situation in Iran, and what each country is bringing to it, and what the perspective is on where the United States is going wrong. You know, what is that?
Well, I mean, I'm probably going to say some things that I think a lot of people are not going to like, but I think that the U.S. has really started a total mess when they even went into the Afghanistan after the 9/11, really. And I know that the first reaction was to just, you know, go in and, you know, get Osama bin Laden or whoever did it. But I think they should have took a lesson from Russians back in the 80s when they went into the same region, and they didn't really get anywhere. It's kind of like, you know, kind of like cockroaches, really. You kill 2 and 10 more come out. And so, well, eventually they did get bin Laden, but they didn't get anywhere in Afghanistan. You know, they tried to install democracy there, which certainly didn't work. And then they decided to go to Iraq. That was another mistake. Tried to install democracy there. That didn't work either. And so now they have, you know, Iraq sort of in shambles, really. If you think about it. I don't know. I think Americans don't really understand that, you know, Islam and democracy don't go together.
You know, you're absolutely right. They just don't. There's so many of them here that just really don't get that the two do not correlate, that there's no such thing as coexisting with Islam.
No, not really. But I think a lot of people don't know much about Islam. I've read a great deal about it, and so I know when they tell you, no, these terrorists, they're not really following Islam. Actually, they are. They're following it to the letter, to be exact. So that's what the real Islam is. The person who doesn't do that is not following the true Islam.
That's absolutely correct. Absolutely correct. Let me ask you something, Victoria. I would venture to say that that most of our listeners would probably agree that we had no business going into a ground war in Afghanistan. We had no business going into a ground war in Iran.
Right.
However, I mean, in retaliatory fashion, because that's the nature of the American citizen, is we would have been quite content with them flying over and just dropping a bunch of I mean, if we'd have pulled a Hiroshima there, we'd all been a lot happier, I think. Of course, that's not acceptable always to the rest of the world. I think one of the big things about having you on tonight was because we have a predisposition for how we look at Russians because we think back to communist Russia. And and I'm sure that having been, a Russian citizen, that you formulate your own opinions about Americans. Having come from the background with Russia and its history of communism, because that was not so long ago. What do you see with the direction that the United States political system is running now?
Well, the problem is, I think, is that a lot of people think that communism and liberalism is the same thing, but it really isn't. There's different forms of communism. You know what I mean? But where I grew up, despite what most people would think, it was very conservative, actually. I grew up in a sort of environment that could be described as conservative, sort of Christian environment, although it wasn't Christian. But in terms of morals and values, it certainly was. It was very traditional, family-oriented, the kind of environment where people loved their country. They were, they were, I guess you would say patriot. They love their country. They may not have loved their government necessarily, but their country is something else. But Americans, a lot of them, they don't seem to love their country anymore. A lot of them don't. They complain about how bad things are and whatever. They hate America. I'm not talking about, all Americans, obviously. But unfortunately, there's many like that I met who do that. And so I would say that in the United States, which we see playing out, it's more of a liberal socialism scenario.
Yes.
And it's really quite unlike what I grew up with. So the only similarities, I would say, is the involvement of government in many areas of your life.
How can you tell our listeners how long have you been in America? So get a better idea of your perspective.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I left. I was born and raised in the USSR, so during the Cold War, and
Okay.
I moved to the United States in 1989.
Ah.
Yeah. So
Okay.
at the time I was 17. So I definitely was old enough to see things and understand things, and have opinions and things like that.
Okay.
And I would say that I think a lot of Americans still have that Cold War mentality, us against, the communists.
Okay.
But I think the reality of it is that they have a different problem now. Russia is not really the problem now. I think the problem is the liberalism and Islam is what they should be worrying about.
We preach that here on the show. Yeah. Okay. Now I have to ask you another question. So you came here. You grew up, like you said, born and raised in the USSR. You came here in '89. Now '89 is right before the fall of the Berlin War.
Right.
Berlin Wall. And so big events for what was happening over in the USSR and stuff like that. Like you said, they had already been embroiled in Afghanistan for I think close to a decade at that point. It was really just sucking all their military resources, and they weren't accomplishing anything. What have you noticed since coming to the United States in 1989 and the year 2015? I mean, just in broad terms, what have you seen get better, or have you seen things get better, or have you seen things go downhill? Would you say that that's been more the what's happening than the other way?
Oh, yeah. Well, I think that things have definitely gotten much worse over the years with pretty much everything. I used to think that someone like Clinton wasn't a great president, but comparing to the current person we have sitting in the White House, he's a friend, really. And that's things. While I would say that a lot of people supported, both George Bush Jr. and Sr., I was not a great fan of either one of them, just because of their foreign policy in general. But I think that while they were in the office, that things were much, much better in the U.S. in general. I think the things got so politically correct and so liberal that I think we're sort of skyrocketing towards the Sodom and Gomorrah at a very fast rate.
I love that you say Sodom and Gomorrah, because that's exactly right. Relating it to a biblical fact, that is exactly where we seem to be headed right now. Yeah,
I have no doubt about that. And that's, honestly, I think even if you're not a Christian, I think it's pretty obvious that the U.S. is trying to model itself on a lot of countries in Europe. And if you know what's happening in Europe, it's not a pretty picture. The Europe's goose is cooked, basically. What they had with their, they have a huge Islamic problem. I think that, honestly, in another 50 years, it's going to be almost fully Islamic if they don't wake up and smell the coffee.
Do you honestly, and of course, just your opinion, do you honestly think it'll take that long at the rate that they're going right now? I mean, I think Germany is starting to cut off the spigot a little bit, but...
Well, I'm being overly optimistic, I think, because it's entirely possible it would happen a lot sooner. And I'm sure you all heard about the current, the current crisis they're having with the so-called refugee, the influx of the people from Syria. Was it? I think.
Right.
They're trying to come in, or I should say invade, because if you look who's coming in, they all seem to be men. I don't see women and children coming around, so I have really big suspicions that it's really not some unfortunate fleeing the war, et cetera, et cetera.
You brought up something very interesting, and you said that the United States went in, and a lot of people don't know this, and that's why I'm bringing it up, is that the United States went into Afghanistan, and that they should have learned from Russia's departure from Afghanistan. Can you elaborate upon that, please?
Well, the problem, I think that when Russia went in, they had their own ideas of what they want to do, probably their own government that was sympathetic to them, etc., that they can control. But what they didn't realize is that Afghanistan and many other Arab countries, they really it's a tribal culture. They wage a totally different warfare than they've ever seen before. And so, and like I mentioned in the beginning, you really cannot fight a war the way they were fighting it then, but then the United States did exactly the same thing. They were crawling out of all kinds of holes, striking out and, going back in. So you didn't know who was the friendly one, who was the enemy. And indeed, there was many cases, from what I've heard, the American soldiers were killed by, people in Iraq and Afghanistan, but they sort of were friendly. So that's, it's really is a huge mistake, trying to send troops on the ground, trying to determine who's friendly and who isn't, because there's so many different clan affiliations that they're there. They're always fighting each other. It's really a no-win war. It was then, and it wasn't now.
Well, you're absolutely correct. I mean, when Sunni and Shia cannot even coexist, Kurds and Yazidis, is that it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Can't coexist. Then why would you bring them into any nation that has such diverse culture as almost anywhere else in the world besides the Mideast, and expect them to coexist? It's just not going to happen. However, I've got an interesting question for you. What was the philosophy of the Russians? What was the general opinion and attitude excuse me, of Russians at the time when Russia was involved in Afghanistan?
Well, I think most people that I know, and I was a teenager at the time, so I mean, it wasn't like I was all that interested in politics. You have to remember, but they all thought it's sort of a losing game. They thought the government was wasting their time and the lives of the troops, really. So they didn't think. I mean, the people didn't think it was the greatest idea in the world, if you know what I mean. But the government is the one who tells the soldiers where to go. That's just what it is.
That sounds so familiar. Gosh.
Yeah.
Eerily familiar. Because there is there is the concept of, like you said, still maintaining that Cold War mentality. And we often forget that we're dealing with people, civilized people, not Mideast people, but civilized people, who basically have, the same functioning day to day as any of us have. And, we lose sight, and we do still have a great deal of that Cold War mentality. And there, we in America take a great pride, albeit we do have some individuals that probably shouldn't be here. They probably would be very well suited for Sweden or Denmark or France or any other country but this one. Probably could not hang in Russia or China. Probably would not fare well in Japan, but France or Sweden would probably work for them. And those are the people who do not love this country. But I can tell you, when 9/11 occurred here, we saw a unity in this country between the citizens of this country that was overwhelming. It was absolutely overwhelming. And I'm sure that you've seen that in Russia as well. All these countries, even with the age of the internet and everything else, they try to keep some news within the airwaves that are above their country. They don't want people to see the humanity in other things anymore. We've got a media here in the United States of America that only wants you to see humanity in those things that are detrimental to us.
Yeah, that is definitely correct. I mean, I think when the attacks happened on 9/11, I know everyone was horrified, not just in America, but the civilized world, so to speak. Of course, if you look at the Middle East, you will see them all dancing on the streets in joy. Oh no, so great, thanks to America. Yeah, they were so happy. I mean, it was sickening. But you have to understand that in Russia, for example, I know people felt that pain because they had their own share of terrorist attacks, where many people were killed, and so they know exactly what was happening. But I think one thing I would say that is different in some ways is that when it comes to taking decisive action, I think that especially the current Russian President Putin, he's definitely done a much better job than many American presidents within the last 10 years or whatever. My feeling personally is that I feel like if you tell American troops to go to war, they're not even letting them fight the enemy. It's kind of like, they want them to be the politically correct soldiers. I mean, really. In Russia, no one cared. I mean, you know what I'm saying? If you have an enemy, this is who you come to fight, this is who you come to kill. And during war, there is going to be innocent people get killed. That is just the reality.
There is.
But, and unfortunately, the U.S. government is not something, they're not willing to accept that reality. They want you to fight the war without killing anyone.
Yeah, that rules of engagement crap.
I have a question for the caller. You kind of referenced it already, and I think I have a good idea, but just wondering, what do you think of Putin versus Obama? And, especially with Russia now saying no to gays and Islamics, it was especially poignant during the Olympics that they just had within the last year or so. Putin said we're not going to have you're not going to have these openly gay displays and stuff. We don't want this. But yet in America, I mean, we're letting 2 or 3% of the population, roughly what we consider the sodomites or the gays, to be part, about 2 or 3%. We're letting them kind of set the stage for everything and make the rules, help make the laws and stuff like that. What do you think of that?
Well, I think it's pretty sad state of events that America has gone so low that they are letting these people to dictate the laws and how everybody should act around them, really. The thing is though, what I grew up with, there was no such thing as, gay people walking down the street making out. You're not going to see that. There's no way. And lately, especially, I know they passed the laws, not just about, I think, the public displays of affection, but also about what they called anything that would, any materials that would tell people, or I think they were talking about teenagers actually, that it's an acceptable lifestyle or anything like that, because they don't want the young people to be reading anything and thinking that is okay. And that's when the whole hubbub was, during the Olympics, because from what I recall, people from Europe and U.S. were acting like, there were going to be mobs on the street. They were going to, lynch them all or something, you know what I mean?
Right.
Which is just ridiculous, because no such thing was going to happen or happened.
Well, but, there were those of us, Victoria, there were those of us, and I am not alone, and I know that applauded and celebrated Russia's stance, because we feel like we have such a weak government. And it is nice it's refreshing. As like we said, there's still some of us that are not going to forget that Putin was a KGB agent. I mean, we just aren't. I mean, we're just not going to forget that. However, there is an admiration for that strength and looking out for one's own country when we have such weakness and disregard that is steadily running us down the bullet train towards self-destruction.
Yeah, but and the truth of the matter is, I think that a lot of people actually do admire Putin in Russia, because he was because he worked for KGB. I mean, he wasn't some as people in America call him, some gangster or whatever. But the fact is, the KGB is an equivalent of American CIA, so it's really not very different, which is why most Russian people can't quite understand why Americans have such a problem with that part, if you know what I mean.
That's a good point.
Yeah. So, but I mean, there's no indication that he was one of those, spies, who went undercover and who killed people or tortured them, or anything of the sort. I mean, he was one of the officers who worked for them. I think just like any, CIA officer would work for CIA. So, but it also tells you that one thing he isn't is stupid, which is more I can say than for that individual we have in the White House right now.
I've got to hear it. What do you think of our milk chocolate messiah?
Well, am I allowed to say he's a douche?
Yes, absolutely. We can say everything but the F word.
Well, I think that would be actually a very kind word towards him. A very kind one. I mean, he's probably the most incompetent, arrogant, egotistical turd I've seen in quite a while. So Clinton and his scandals, it doesn't even come close.
Wow.
Yeah, isn't that something?
Let's see. Let's say when you are lower than somebody who nobody wants to be friends with because all their friends just die. That is pretty bad there. Do you think that what do you think the ulterior motive is behind what is going on in our government now and the support for this? Do you think that it's just that he is that arrogant and ignorant? Do you think it's intentional? And if so, why?
Well, I think a lot of people will probably think like me, ask themselves this question. But I honestly don't think he's that stupid. But I think it is an intentional move towards, the socialism and towards the liberalism and all that stuff, because People, even before he was elected, a lot of people could see the writing on the wall. I know I could. I didn't think 1 minute that he was Christian or anything of the sort. I thought that something was fishy about the guy from the beginning. And so I think a lot of things he's done is intentional. I think he definitely has a very Islamic views. He definitely favors Muslims. He definitely favors black individuals under everyone else. So it's he favors certain groups of people over others, and he gives them preference. That much is obvious.
Now, do you think that's because he's he feels like he was the underdog, even though he was raised in a white house and by white grandparents and a white mother, or do you just think that is like the teenager that is grasping to fit in somewhere?
Well, frankly, I honestly think that he's a racist himself. That's what I think. Despite him having a white mother and all that stuff. Like if you look at it, I briefly flipped through some of his books, and his writings are writings of someone who is sort of deeply, I would say, almost envious of everyone else who has it better than him, or he thinks. There's some definite overtones of how much he doesn't really particularly care for white people. So I don't think it's really anything about the underdog or anything of the sort. I think he's just one of those individuals who's not particularly pleasant with a chip on his shoulder.
Interesting that you brought up the part, about the of course we've got the Muslim problem. I think we're in the next crusade, but maybe in the future they'll figure out exactly what date that started. I do know there's been a lot of talk about building a caliphate. Of course, they are doing their best to take over throughout the Middle East and now going into Europe. But this recent poll that just came out, I believe it was today from CNN, they're talking about, they polled people about where they think he was born. Of course, there's always been the so-called birthers that think he wasn't not born in the United States at all, that there's never been sufficient proof. But this poll that just came out said that overall, and this number's holding pretty steady apparently from 2010, 29% of Americans say they think Obama is a Muslim, and that number rises to 43% among Republicans. So about a third of the people in America do think he's a Muslim. I'm sorry. And of course, if he, he acts like it. He may or may not be. Now, my co-host says he is undoubtedly, but if he's not, he sure as heck does act like one, and he sure as heck does, side with them on almost every matter since he's been in office now over 7 years. There is no doubt about that.
Yes, I absolutely believe he's a Muslim.
What's the saying about that?
The thing is though is if he's born of a Muslim, a Muslim father, he's automatically a Muslim.
Right.
So if he, if his father was a Muslim, then he is a Muslim. And he may, deny it until he's blue in the face, but that's not the case. And so he also, it's also clear that I believe he used one because he used sort of the Arabic names for, I think it was for Jerusalem, some speech or something or other. And he used, Arabic names for the mosque there and for Jerusalem, which normally, if you're a Western person and you're not a Muslim, you would not use.
Good point. So, I know what you're referring to. I can't think of it. It's right at the tip of my tongue, but yeah, I know what you're referring to, and that's correct. And most of the time that he talks, he takes the sides of the Muslims, and he has. I think he's incited them. I think he's incited them to action throughout the Middle East, and I think Hillary Clinton, when she was Secretary of State, did the exact same thing. They stood on the grave of Gaddafi from Libya and basically said, we came, we saw, he died. Gloating over the death. And I'm not saying that, Gaddafi was a great friend of the United States, but in some of these countries, as you probably well know, sometimes the devil you know is better than the devil you don't. Like with Assad in Syria, Assad is not a good person, but yet he's kept a peace between the Christians and Muslims for a long time. It seems like whenever we go in there, we destabilize it even more, and it seems like since Obama has been in office, it always goes to the the fact that the Muslims gain more power, gain more strength, and to the detriment of the Christians now getting slaughtered across the Middle East.
Yeah, exactly. That actually would bring me to the next point, because I'm sure you heard that Russia has their troops on the ground in Syria.
Yes, we've talked about that.
So, and I think some people may be wondering why. Now, this is just my opinion. I'm these states.
I think we're losing. We lost whatever you just said.
Yeah, can you repeat that, Victoria, please?
About Syria, you had just started talking about Russia in Syria.
Yeah, so having that country stable and not warring is really in the best interest of Russia, to be honest. It was a Russian ally previously. So that's why he wishes to keep Assad in power. Now, the mistake it seems that the American government made many times over is supporting the Arab Spring, which created a whole mess of of that region, specifically in Egypt and in other countries, because almost every one of those countries had some sort of a dictator in power, and I guess Assad can be considered one as well. But they kept the country stable. That's the important part.
Right.
And the U.S. decided that they needed, a democracy, and they went in, and now it's a big old mess with all the, Islamic, fruitcakes running around. So that is why. It's important, I think, to Russia to try to keep the peace and to actually support Assad.
Let me ask you something. Okay, we've got the situation with Assad. We also have the Iranian nuke deal. And with the Iranian nuke deal, not only is the United States and other countries supporting their capability to have their own nuclear program in Iran, but you also have Russia selling them intercontinental ballistics, which could be able to, have a nuclear warhead attached to them. Why do you think that there's this collaborative deal with Iran between both Russia and the United States and France and England, with the Germany? What other countries are involved in that, Senor?
I think in terms of U.S., I think it was honestly the stupidest thing I've ever seen in my life. In terms, I mean, they really pretty much handed it to them on a silver platter.
Right.
Considering that, Iran always said, the U.S. is the devil. They wanted to say nothing more, but no. But here you go. Here's the nuke, and was it, extra money. Excuse me. Extra money just for making the deal. I mean, from what I hear, that's what happened. But in Russia, from that perspective, they want to keep they want to keep the place as an ally, and that has always been that way. And I think, personally, I think they're operating as the enemy of my enemy is my friend.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I think it's possible, and I mean, I can see why they want to sell them arms, because that's just like, why not? You know what I mean? I think if Obama hasn't made a big mess with Russia, especially with the recent events in Ukraine, this whole thing may not have happened. I think he could have made Russia an ally as well, at least at this time, but he didn't. He made it an enemy. At this moment, there's a lot of Russians who don't particularly like American government. I can tell you that much. And in Russia, they always had respect for American people. But now that has changing. It's been changing as well, especially since the Olympics and this whole gay situation.
Interesting. In some respects, maybe Russia's turning to be more conservative and more traditional values than the United States is, in other words.
Yes, that's actually exactly what I mean.
By and large.
Yeah, especially now that the church in Russia is experiencing sort of a revival, if you will. It's been going on since the fall of the USSR, but now it's bigger than ever. Now there's big push to return, to conservatism and very traditional family values more than ever. More and more people turn to Christianity. More and more people turn toward God, while America is going the opposite direction.
Mm-hmm. Isn't it? Indeed.
Let me ask you something, Victoria. Recognizing that as other countries are waking up, even in so much as Germany today, who was going to take in 800,000 Islamics a year, as of today has closed its border. You've got situations in France and England, and all across this country. Denmark's starting to deport Islamics. As you see a scenario there where those people in those countries are recognizing the error of their ways, and you are seeing more of the populace say, we can't accept this, and we've got to pull back, and we've got to gain moral ground. And yet you see America watching all of these other countries implode, all of these socialist countries implode, and America is going as fast as it can in that direction under the false pretense that there is utopia in that. I know that you still have friends and family in Russia. What do they think about the insanity of all this?
Well, I think most people there, they think that this is a really completely stupid thing to do. Now going back to, and I don't know how much anyone knows about the history of Russia. Going back to 1917 and the revolution that happened there when actually the communists came to power. Even then, they have learned that dealing with Islamists is really a dangerous proposition, because what they wanted to do at the time is, they were sort of living like many do, in backwards kind of environments. The time, the women were nothing more than slaves. They were covered from head to toe, in the burqa and stuff. They weren't allowed to go to school or go anywhere, really. So the communists wanted to sort of free them and liberate them. And believe me, it took a lot of murders and a lot of bloodshed before that actually happened. So they know what they're dealing with. And in Russia, they would never be allowed to take that kind of foothold and to carry that kind of power. While they're allowed to live there, they would not be allowed to sort of have that kind of control and to have that kind of a say, because they're just not trusted that way.
Wow. I just think that that any country that had been under socialism and had lived under communism would at some point look at America and say, you fools, you pathetic fools.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think a lot of them, they think that now. I know a lot of Russian people think that Americans have really done some stupid things, over here with all the liberal reforms that they have instituted. but a lot of people in America think that Russia actually is pretty bad because, they have a thing against homosexuals, they have a thing against liberals, they think that there's corruption everywhere, which is true. Don't get me wrong. I don't think it's like a perfect place or anything.
No.
But I think the reality of it is that there's certain things they don't want to tolerate because, well, there are people of different ethnic backgrounds living in Russia. Like here, some people who are in a small group of, they dictating the policy. This would never be allowed to happen in Russia.
Wow.
Well, we're supposed to have a Congress comprised of people elected representatives of the people representing us, but obviously we have a one-party system at best. So, yeah. I mean, we're supposed to, if it all worked right, we're supposed to have, better than what we do. But unfortunately, this is what we've settled for as well. I mean, we just think the next election will solve all of our problems, and we'll vote a couple of the bums out, and everybody else will get in line. And of course, as soon as they get elected again, or for the first time, then they promptly tend to turn around and shoot us the bird and do whatever they want, and all work together. And it seems like not for we the people.
Yeah, I don't think it'll be quite as simple as that, unfortunately. And I foresee, I don't know who's going to get elected. I only hope it's someone who will do at least something different from what it is now. Especially with, there's issues with millions of illegals in the country. I know that's like a sore spot for some, but I still don't get one very important part. Why, if they're illegals, why they're still here?
Yes.
Why aren't they deported?
Mm-hmm.
Because, and I know many immigrants that came here by legal means, and that makes all of us very angry.
Well, I would agree with that.
We had to go through all that stuff, to get in the country legally, right, long process and all that stuff. But they just come in, they climb over the border, they get the benefits, and they're like, oh, I just want to stay here.
Yeah. Let me ask you something. You just brought up something very interesting. What was the process for you to come to America?
Well, in my case in particular, we actually came for a visit, and then we actually applied for documents to stay. And so it took a while. It took I think it was a year or two or something like that. So it was a while before we got the proper documents and green card and all that stuff. But it never occurred to me, I'm just going to go hide out and I want to be in America, as illegal. That just wouldn't even.
One would assume that you would live sort of that criminal lifestyle of always wondering when someone was going to come knock on your door and uproot you from your home. And that's the fear that there should be with being an illegal or an invader in this nation. And that's for any nation. I mean, we've discussed that many times on this show. Any nation that does not recognize and protect its own borders is not a nation.
That is true. And in most countries, if that happened, they would have been shot at the border. But, America doesn't do that. They're pretty much letting everyone in and give them the benefits and give them even, ID cards and all kinds of things, healthcare, I don't know, welfare, whatever they want. So I don't even know what to say to that, really.
Yeah, you pretty much said it all right there, and just what you said. I mean, it doesn't happen anywhere else. So I mean,
no, it doesn't. And I think I have, I have a few friends who are from other countries, that came here legally, and that part upsets them. I also know for a fact that people who are applying to come to America from, for example, from the Western countries or from Australia, South Africa, Europe, anywhere else, they're actually having a very hard time even getting, the government to allow them to stay. Very difficult. But on the same note, they allow some, a shepherd of the goats from Africa or the Middle East come, no problem.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and, you know, I'm talking about the people who have college education, you know, who would have been able to work and support themselves, but instead they're letting people in who don't even know what toilet is.
Yeah.
Well, that's our toilet paper. Definitely don't know what toilet paper is.
Yeah, definitely don't tell.
And please keep your farm animals away from them.
One of the things people talk about in the United States, you know, more I think in conservative circles, a concern is that we see the world getting much smaller. Of course, globalization, obviously, they've been pushing for that for a long time. But something we refer to kind of loosely as the NWO, the New World, what is it? New World. What does it stand for? New World Order. Did Russians think about that? Did they think that there's something nefarious happening? You know, that the bankers and lots of other people are getting together and actually trying to do that? Is that something that you heard of? Maybe you don't remember it back then in the 80s. I don't know that I even did back then, but
yeah, no, I don't think so.
Okay.
Not that I've heard ever, really. I think the kind of thing is just sort of a conspiracy theory type of deal. So I don't know.
Okay.
But, I mean, yeah. So not from what I've heard so far.
Okay. They just wonder what the heck we're doing over here, with the Muslims, with the open borders, and with the everything else we're doing. The openly celebrating homosexuality. Yeah.
Well, I can tell you, they just think that Americans are pretty stupid, which is unfortunate.
And fortunate, and it's
our
true.
Government keeps proving them right.
Mm-hmm.
Victoria, I have another question I have to ask you.
Uh-huh.
Now, I know you didn't come from a particularly religious background.
Right.
You know, a moral background, obviously, but maybe not a religious background.
Mm-hmm.
Given the knowledge that you have, what is your opinion of what is going on with the Pope as far as his push for the Islamization, as far as just basically erasing all borders and letting people live wherever they want to live? Which, folks, let's be honest, if everybody lived in actuality where they wanted to live,
mm-hmm.
we would be separate. We would formulate our own groups.
Well, here's I mean, what I think is, I mean, I became a Christian some maybe 8 years ago or so. So it's a lot of conservative Catholics and Christians that I know, they think he's very much of a liberal, you know, socialist, Marxist type. They also think that he is a heretic, and I'm not, you know, exaggerating, because there's some things that come out of his mouth that I've heard that's pretty much straight out of the socialist playbook.
Right.
So there's, I know a lot of Catholics don't even like him. They know, you know, they don't want to. Some don't even think of him as a true pope, to be honest. But unfortunately, you know, he got elected, so here we are.
Yeah.
But the sad truth is that if this was even several centuries ago, this would have never happened. The popes at the time knew that, you know, bowing down to Muslims, it was unheard of. They were the enemy. They have tried to take over Europe on so many occasions, and they've succeeded getting, you know, a huge part of Spain for centuries. So when they finally got ejected, you know, all the battles that were fought, you know, the battle at Tours, you know, in France, the Battle of Vienna, all the effort that was spent ejecting them from Europe. Now we have popes, you know, him and even several before him, who invited the Muslims pretty much with open arms. So I'm pretty sure that, you know, all the popes previously to him are rolling over in their graves.
Mm-hmm.
Let me ask you something. As the Muslims expand, which is what they desire, they want to be global so that they can initiate their caliphate. Do you see another situation where citizens of China and Russia and the United States and all countries in between work coordinatively in a crusades fashion to eradicate and push them back into their little box?
I doubt that very much. Just because I think that, especially given the current animosity between the Russia and U.S.
Mm-hmm.
I know that Russia doesn't want to help us. I know that Russia wouldn't help U.S. now. But I think they're kind of operating at the moment. Well, U.S. can deal with this problem themselves. We're going to take care of our own.
That's, I hate to say it, but that's not a bad philosophy to have. However, at some point, Russia will have to deal with this problem. If we don't swat it down, then it is gonna have to deal with the problem, because right here in the United States of America, I think that there is enough individuals out there to say, you come here and make this a daily occurrence, then we're going to do what we need to do. I would hope that we still have men and women of the integrity and value that we had in our Revolutionary War. However, Russia shares a border with so many countries that that it would be fairly easy for it to be at Russia's door as it gains traction and foothold. On this show, many times we have discussed the rate of reproduction, and I don't know what the rate of reproduction is in Russia. In China, I believe it's just 1 per 2. But here in the United States, it's 2.4 per 2. Whereas the Islamics the Islamic males generally sire, and I say that because I see them more as animals, they sire 12 children on average. So as their numbers grow and the intensity, eventually Russia is going to have to contend with it.
Well, I think I have no doubt that they would definitely deal with the Muslims they have in their own country, whether they would make an effort to push them out, fight them, in any other fashion in the Middle East. That one I honestly can't say, because right now I think that Putin is making allies, in all those countries, in those regions, because the EU and U.S. have decided to sanction them. They decided to make them into enemies. Well, they have to make, alliances elsewhere. But that's for now. I don't know what will happen in the future. But I think that, the last crusade is long overdue. I would agree with you on that one.
Okay.
I agree with that. Well, Victoria, it has been an absolute pleasure. I know you were nervous about coming on,
Couldn't
but
tell.
you were fantastic.
Yeah, very much.
Oh, well, thank you very much. It was certainly interesting to talk to you guys and see what you think.
Well,
it's nice to have someone like you, that came here at the age of 17 from a foreign country. So you lived, a considerable part of your young life over there. And then, your impressions of America since you've been here, what you've seen. And actually, like you said, you actually became legalized. You did this the right way, as many people do, but now so many people don't nowadays. It's just good to get your impressions and your feelings and your thoughts, and that's what they are. I mean, like you said, you're not a quote-unquote expert, but actually you are in probably more cases than some, because you've actually got that experience of having lived there as a citizen in the USSR during the Cold War, and then having been here ever since, since 1989, like you said. So I think that's it's good to talk to folks like you, and see, get different perspectives of different people.
Yeah, well, I definitely appreciate you guys having me. So,
well, I think I think what I'm coming away from this with, in all honesty, is there's really not post USSR Russia. The populace is not as different as the populace here. They just have the nerve. They have not bought into the PCBS because they know where it got you. It's recent enough in their history to know where that gets you. And they're squashing movements like the LGBTQTUVW, whatever the hell it is next, and the Islamics, and they would never tolerate their borders being flooded like our borders are being flooded. Am I wrong, Victoria?
No, you definitely are correct. And sadly to say that I think the Europeans, especially, they really have been kind of, what's the word I can use?
Wussified.
Balls, the balls cut off, basically.
They've been neutered.
Yes.
Turned into a eunuch. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, exactly. So they are not really. It's like they are not capable of making decisive decisions. They're not capable of being ruthless when it needs to be, and they're not capable of, defending their country when it needs to be. That's the sad truth, unfortunately, and many Americans have given out to the same mindset, sadly.
Well, thanks for being on the show. Like I said, the time passed by quickly. If you were nervous, I could not tell. And once again, we just appreciate your insight, and it is valuable. We'd love to hear from other people and what their thoughts are, and especially when coming from like you said, it was that was the evil when I was growing up, is the USSR. They were going to nuke us into Kingdom Come, and we were going to do the same, and they were our bitter enemies. Right. And like you said, not everybody there is like that.
No, definitely not. Yeah. So
no, but everybody there thinks Americans are. No, but everybody there thinks Americans are stupid now.
And they're pretty much, don't judge us all, but sad to say, this country is going in the wrong direction.
Thanks, Obama.
Yeah, but I love America. I think it's a great country, and I can only hope that a lot of people will change change their mindset, so they won't end up like the Europe is ending up now, basically.
I have one question. I have one more question. Mm-hmm. You have the option to go back to Russia. Am I correct?
Well, I guess I could if I wanted to.
Okay, so if we move further down, at what point down the socialist Alinsky rabbit hole would we have to drop for you to consider returning to Russia? Or would you ever?
I honestly don't know. It's a question that I've asked myself, actually fairly recently, because it felt like the things were going so much down the drain, in America. But I think it would have to go down somewhat further. Maybe kind of like South Africa. If things got as bad as they are right now in South Africa with the ANC, and I don't know if you guys know what the situation is going on there, but if things got as bad as that, I would probably want to go to Russia again.
Wow. Well,
do you see the potential for it ever getting that way here?
Well, I think we're on the way, actually, to be honest. I think in terms of the pandering and the race relations, this has never been worse. And I know people from South Africa, the things are pretty horrifying. So I think if U.S. continues on that path, I think that we're going to end up exactly the same way.
Wow. Well, I just thought it was an interesting question because, so many people in this country have an option to go elsewhere. We've got a great deal of Canadians. The invaders, they're free to leave. Where do we go? And who will have us? We have nowhere to go, folks. We have nowhere to go. So if we don't stand and fight, we have nowhere to go.
No.
No, and honestly, I think that a lot of us, they pray every day that things will change for the better.
No, I would agree with that. I'll tell you what, one of the most refreshing things that I saw was on 9/12, which was day before yesterday, when I got back to my computer and got in social networks, and I saw where a lightning bolt had come down on a mosque and hit a crane.
Oh,
and
right,
yet,
it hit Mecca.
Exactly, and yet there was this beautiful rainbow over New York City, and I thought, that is gorgeous. I'm sorry, I'm looking at these two pictures side by side, and I thought they were both beautiful.
Well, a lot of people that I know thought it was really a divine wrath.
What?
Exactly.
A lot of people that I know, they thought it was, the God was really sending his punishment down on them.
Well, one can hope that God's wrath will continue through, that he will stand for those who stand for him, and it is all the more reason that, guys, we cannot shy away from our faith. If you don't have a relationship with God, I would suggest highly that you get one. You may need it.
Unfortunately, America has become a very godless country, and that is a terrible thing.
Well, the biggest thing, I'll be honest with you, the biggest thing that that I see encountered on a daily basis is people don't want to defend their faith. That when they're told it's stupid or that doesn't make sense, or an atheist says, well, we actually evolved. Seriously, you fool, you have faith in the missing link that has never been discovered. So your faith in something that doesn't exist is no different than you feel my faith in something that you don't think exists is. But the difference is, if I die and I'm wrong, I've lost nothing. If you die and you're wrong, you've lost everything.
Yeah, I agree. But I will definitely defend my faith, come hell or high water. I just wish that there was more people who were willing to do that. But everyone is too afraid to offend someone.
Well, we do. Political correctness was the first implementation that was truly effective in the downfall and the decline of the United States of America. And folks, if we don't put a stop to it, it will be our destruction.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Well, Victoria, again, when you and I talked, we didn't know if you would be able to hang with us for 15 minutes or stay with us an hour or what have you, and you've been with us a little over an hour. We have so appreciated it, and I am glad you felt well enough to be with us the whole time tonight.
Yes, thank you.
All right, well, no problem. I was glad to help out.
Well, I would love to have you come back again sometime on a night that we are, focusing 100% on the Mideast and Islamics and maybe some history, Russian history, because a lot of folks don't know that Russia was over there fighting in Afghanistan before the United States was.
Yeah, definitely, and I will be definitely happy to talk about that subject. That's something that I have an interest in personally, so I'll definitely be happy to come back anytime.
Well, we would love to have you. Absolutely, it has been our pleasure. Senor.
Thank you so much, Victoria, for being with us.
All right,
you have a great evening,
problem.
and we will definitely be in touch.
All right, y'all take care.
All right, thank you, Victoria.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye. What a fantastic guest. Going into it, we had spoken a little bit, and I thought it would be interesting to see the viewpoint through the lens, through the eyes of another individual from somewhere else.
Right.
To look at us from another perspective. You know, sometimes you're in the middle of the forest and all you see are the trees, and you know all the trees, they're all familiar. You can navigate through that forest. However, what does it look like going in? You know, what does it look like from afar? And I think sometimes as Americans, we kind of get arrogant sometimes and think that, you know, we're the be-all, end-all of the party, and don't understand that we are under the spotlight.
Mm-hmm.
That we are being viewed by others, and we are being assessed by others, and it's interesting to me. You know, I've always looked at the KGB. You know, we were talking about Putin, and I've always looked at the KGB as some, you know, nefarious, you know, cruel intent. And I'm sitting here thinking, when she says, well, it's no different than our CIA, and we know some of the atrocities our CIA has committed.
Right. So you better believe it.
So, I mean, great analogy there, and I guess I had always correlated it, but I just assumed that the Russians were so much more brutal, but I guess really not.
I was going to say, I think if people really knew the stories behind it, and you can say, you know, you can defend it for nationalism or, you know, expediency, you know, it needed to happen, something. I think some of the things we've done around the world, like I said, go right along with lots of organizations throughout. I don't even want to name them and stuff, but I mean, some of the atrocities we've probably committed. And let's not forget, folks, we were the ones training the Mujahideen over in Afghanistan in the 80s. We were giving them weapons
to fight Russia.
You know, fight the Russians. And guess what? Then they used our training and stuff right back on us. When, what about 10 years later? Not quite 10. A little over 10 years later.
We brought Osama bin Laden for a visit at our CIA headquarters to be trained here, and to our White House.
We helped create that monster, folks. You can believe it or not, and you can say we were doing it for different reasons or whatever. Doesn't matter. We helped create the monster. And we've been involved in South America and throughout history. We've been involved on the wrong side of things. Saddam Hussein himself, we were supporting him when he was in the war against Iran. It was a horrible war. Iran was gassing him. I mean, it was horrible what was happening. And but once again, Saddam was the devil we knew better than the devil we didn't. I mean, it's happened over and over again.
Well, we're going to be discussing some of that. We're going to be discussing some of that tomorrow night. Suzanne is going to be joining us tomorrow night to be discussing some of that, how we have altered the world by our meddling in foreign affairs. You know, guys, we've talked many times about the fact that we're not supposed to meddle in foreign affairs. I know that Rand Paul's daddy, what's his name?
Rand? Or Ron? Ron Paul's dad, Rand's son.
Ron Paul caught a lot of flack because of his insistence in we had no business meddling in foreign affairs. But he had justification for that, because our founding fathers felt like that anything that did not occur within the borders of our soil really had no impact and effect on us. Now, true enough, we've got into a situation where we become globalist, but that still does not mean that we meddle in foreign affairs. However, the United States of America has made a huge habit of doing so, and like I said, we're going to be talking about that tomorrow night, because there's many things that people don't realize. When you delve into it, most even I, for one, am mostly too young to recall a lot of these things, and so history has a tendency to repeat itself because none of it was taught in high school, because we would never speak ill of our own government back then. You know, we live in a different world now, and we create our own enemies.
Yes.
I mean, I equate it,
and
exactly, and I kind of equate it to the same scenario with, where you've got a husband and wife that are arguing, and I mean viciously arguing, and either side's family get involved. That husband and wife are going to make up. They're going to be mad at every family member there.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter what the situation was. They would have resolved it. Everybody else needs to stay out of it. But we've called ourselves to be the world police. We've been doing it for quite some time. We will be discussing that tomorrow night with Suzanne. I want to remind you guys, too, beyond Suzanne, we've got WTF Wednesday. What the F? Wednesday coming up Wednesday night. And we have Trevor Loudon with us on Thursday night. And I'm really excited about having Trevor.
Definitely.
If you guys are familiar with Trevor, you understand why. And if you're not, you'll definitely want to tune in to find out why everybody else likes Trevor. Guys, if you'd like to tune in or tell your friends, family, co-workers, associates, loved ones, whoever about our show, send them to our website, www.thewtfradioshow.com. Send them to our host network, pnntalkradio.com. Send them to patriotsride.org. You can send them to iTunes, TuneIn, or Spreaker.com. All three have the mobile app so that you can carry us with you on the go. Or you can go to Spreaker, and if you'd like to share this, you can download and share it from there or from YouTube. Guys, we're always accessible. If you'd like to call into this show before we close it out for the night, please do so at 313-462-0068. Senora.
Yeah, V, I wanted to say something here. You always ask me what I'm doing on the weekend, and now that we're almost done with the show, I can tell you one of the things I did this weekend, and I want to read a little bit out of it. It's more poignant because we've just been talking about Afghanistan and Muslims and stuff, but I want to read you guys something. And this is back from 2011, and I think, and I'll explain a little bit more about it after I read it, but just this is the opening of a book that I'm reading, and to reference what I'm talking about here, an AH-64 is an Apache helicopter, designation 64. It's a heavily armed gunship, a helicopter gunship. So listen to this little, and this is from real life, this is a real life story. I'll explain it after I read it to you. Apache Helicopter 64 Pilot 2. I just saw a flash. Did you see a flash? Pilot 1, there's two copters, so this is Pilot 1. Yeah, they're being shot at. Pilot 2, what is that? Pilot 1, dude, I think they just got shot. Pilot 2, Extortion 17, are you shot? Pilot 1, are you on that? Pilot 2, I'm on it. Sir, Extortion 17 is down. I repeat, Extortion 17 is down. Pilot 2, Coalition Traffic, we have a fallen angel. Fallen angel, it's Extortion 17, expletive. Pilot 1, Roger, we have a fallen angel. Extortion 17 was shot down in the Tangi River Valley, expletive. Pilot 2, 1, this is 2. Do you have anything? We've got nothing at this time. We've got a wreckage on fire. Pilot 1, do you see any survivors down there? Pilot 2, I'm not seeing any. No, I'm not seeing anything right now. It's a ball of fire. It looks bad. All right. Oh God, expletive. Man, I'm not seeing anybody, any survivors. Folks, we've talked about Extortion 17 before. Extortion 17 is one of two helicopters. This helicopter was shot down in 2011. It was not a helicopter suited to carry these men. It had 30 special forces in it, including 17 U.S. Navy SEALs from SEAL Team 6, the team that not long before that had got bin Laden, according to official reports. 3 rocket-propelled grenades were fired in rapid succession, and one of them was a 1 in a million shot. It struck a rotor blade on the aft or the rear pylon. Now, these are the helicopters that have two big blades on them. They're the big troop carriers. It sheared off 10.5 feet of the blade, and then with that, it was a critical error, and the helicopter dropped to the ground, and everyone on board was killed. Like I said, 30 Americans. There were also 8 Afghanis on board that should have never been on board that helicopter. I am reading the book called Betrayed. It's the shocking true story of Extortion 17 as told by a Navy SEAL's father. That Navy SEAL's name is Aaron Carson Vaughn. An amazing story, folks, because it's real. It's an amazingly sad story. It's also got me angry. I'm about 3/4 of the way through. And what our government has done in Afghanistan, and to some, we're not so much in Iraq at this point, but in Afghanistan, is give the Afghanistan military almost full control over our boys over there. And they're not allowed to shoot at almost anything. Their rules of engagement, also known as ROE, are the most despicable that you've ever seen. Basically, you have to be shot yourself before you can return fire to the enemy. Our government, I don't know why our military allows it. I know they have to follow the rules of the government that's in control. But this book, folks, Betrayed, about Extortion 17, is just wow. It will make you sad. It will make you mad. Everything all at once. We lost a lot of good guys on that helicopter, and I bring it up in part as well, and part of the reason that I got keyed into Extortion 17, which is the name of that helicopter, is the becoming friends on social media, and even meeting a couple of them in real life, the people that do the overpasses for America. And a lot of their overpasses in the Chicago area, they have a sign that says Extortion 17. Look it up, because folks, this never should have happened. This was, and some people wonder if there wasn't some reason that this helicopter was targeted. Like I said, these Special Forces guys should have never been on this helicopter. It wasn't the Special Forces model. It was just a plain old Chinook helicopter, very vulnerable, and they were all taken out at once. And so you have to be the guess, I guess, at this point, the way this dad is writing this book, he's very much concerned about whether our government, working with the Afghanis and giving, ceding almost full control over to the Afghan military, didn't paint a humongous target on the side of this helicopter, literally, if not figuratively. So that's one of the things I'm doing, is reading that. I encourage you folks to get the book, or look into it more. Once again, just type in Extortion 17 into your web browser and see what you find about that. But it's a very sad story. We lost a lot of good guys in 2011 on that chopper, and the name of the book is Betrayed. And the guy writing it is the dad, of course, of that Navy SEAL. The dad's name is Billy Vaughn. You can get the book. It's soft cover, probably on Amazon and different places. I suggest you see what your government's up to over in Afghanistan, continuing to this day, and the rules of engagement. They've got our troops on over there in that hellhole.
It is, everybody knows I'm not a proponent for rules of engagement. I say if you're going to fight, fight to win.
Fight to kill to win.
Fight to so disable your enemy that they are incapable of retaliating. And that is whether you're in a personal fight or if you're in a war. It does not matter. And just like Victoria said when she was with us, Russians don't play like that. They understand that when you go to war, little babies might die, little women might die, old folks might die, because a smart enemy will strategically place themselves within that environment, hoping that those consciousness of heart individuals will say, oh, we can't mess with that. Let me tell you something. You go into war, there ain't no off limits. If that's where the enemy's at, that's where the enemy dies. Period.
V, look at World War II. We firebombed Berlin and other parts, and Japan as well. I mean, my God, we killed people by the thousands. But they had to weigh what was better for, how many more thousands, hundreds of thousands of people were we going to lose, the Allies going to lose, versus we had to take them out. We had to stop them cold. Our goal was to, like you said, to destroy them, to destroy the evil so that it couldn't come back and bite us later. That's when we actually fought a war. And I'm sure even during that time there were things that happened as well. But I mean, my God, we firebombed entire cities. To show them that we wanted them to stop. We
ended a war by setting off 2 nuclear bombs. Do you think anybody was saying, oh, the poor children, oh, the old ladies? No, they weren't. They were saying, yay, retaliation for Pearl Harbor.
We had to break their spine, figuratively and literally. We had to soak the sass out of them. We had to stop them, folks, to let them know that this is the power that we possess, and we will use it if we have to, because look at the amount of life that would end up dying, for example, with Japan, if we had invaded the mainland of Japan. Those people were fanatics, and I mean, the blood would have flowed in the streets. Indeed, it was all throughout the Pacific.
Sounds like another group that we're dealing with. Had we dealt with it in the same fashion, we would not be dealing with it today. Let me tell you something. We bombed them. The next day, they were ready to sign that paperwork. We're done. We're done. We're out. We stop. We give. Waving that white flag. I'm going to tell you something, folks. If we'd have done that in the Mideast after 9/11, gone over there, right over those training camps, let the whole area turn to glass, they wouldn't be talking this mess now. We would not be dealing with this. They are coming after us because we have displayed weakness. And I'm going to tell you something, folks. 90% of that population out there is weak.
Yeah.
That's just a fact. Now, you guys listen to us. And I don't know why you listen to us. I'm glad you do. But I'm not a big woman. I'm not a powerful woman. But I have that fight in me. I'm not going to just lay down and say, okay. I will never be one of those people who say, oh, well, yeah, I believe in Allah and deny my belief in God and Jesus Christ to appease someone else. I don't care if I die defending what I believe to be right. You want to know why? Because I have faith there's something beyond this. So this is really not that important.
Right.
Until in so much as we have more individuals that feel that way, that are truly willing to sacrifice everything to correct the path of this nation is doomed.
All right, there you have it.
And if you want to know how doomed, Google Venezuela today. Pull up the news from today in Venezuela.
Yeah.
There are riots in the street because people are starving.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's socialism for you folks.
So when you consider everything, you consider that. And if you want to really be proactive about anything, that is, reach out to as many real live human beings in your community as you can that think like you do, that are willing to make that sacrifice.
Yeah. Hey, and V, just so you know, because it's almost the end of the show. Wow, the time sure flies when we're having fun, folks. And once again, we're with you live Monday through Thursday from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern. But the State Department and Homeland Security data reveals that at this point we are admitting more than 250,000 Muslim migrants each year. And of course, President Obama wants to add at least 10,000, if not 100,000 or more. But right now, as of 2013, in the year 2013, we admitted 280,000 migrants from Muslim countries within one single fiscal year. To put these numbers into perspective, that means that every year the U.S. admits a number of Muslim migrants larger in size than the entire population of Des Moines, Iowa, Lincoln, Nebraska, or Dayton, Ohio. Holy smokes, over 250,000. This is the ones that are legally, folks. So as soon as they get here, they're getting, they're getting visa. Let's see. Okay, I got to read it fast. It just hit. But they're getting, everything immediately. So this is the people just walking across the border, which also
they're being seated.
Right.
They are being seated. There is a list of 190 cities across the country that these religious organizations... Now, I thought there was supposed to be a separation of church and state that these atheists keep talking about. Why aren't they all on board all over this? Why is the government working with these supposed religious organizations to seed these communities. And I will say something else about that real quick, and that is they're no longer the topic for these groups, these religious organizations, these groups that are bringing in these refugees, asylees, and lottery winners. They're no longer using the terminology of integrate. Or assimilate. They are now using integrate. They are just integrating a multicultural society. They are no longer saying that these people must assimilate. They are bringing in entire communities of these Islamics, and there's 190 cities, and new ones are popping up daily, like Athens, Georgia, and Spartanburg, South Carolina.
Well,
Folks.
And it started in 2001 is when the increase started. So, we had, another 6-7 years of George Bush. So we can't blame it all on Obama. And unlike illegal immigrants, these immigrants granted lifetime resettlement privileges, including automatic work permits, welfare access, and the ability to become voting citizens. And that's all the time we've got. But there it goes, folks. $250,000 minimum a year already.
Guys, we'll be back tomorrow night, 6 p.m. Eastern, live, unrehearsed, unscripted, PG-13, but never PC. Senor.